We need to start. Hi, good morning. Just sorry, a bit late this morning. We just had some technical issues being sorted out. So, just a bit of introduction. My name is Richard. I'm the founder of North Borneo Historical Society, and I believe you guys have been following this page for quite some time now. So just a bit of myself. As I said, my name is Richard. I'm a, pure Sabahan. Was born in Tawau, but eventually my family moved to KK at some point in time. And so the reason I started off North Borneo Historical Society in 2011, due to the fact that back then I was doing a research specifically on Tawau's history. And then one of the frustrations back then, I wasn't able to find um, good information and history about Sabah. So it was all over the place. There was no single place where you can find relevant information about the history of Sabah. So then I thought to myself, why don't I start North Borneo Historical Society and then gather all the relevant information about our great history into one single place where people from Sabah or Malaysia and people from around the world can go there and and get all the history related to Sabah. So anyway, I've already started in 2011. As you know, we have done some quite a number of work, doing a lot of research of the history. We also, if you remember, a couple of years ago, we pushed a campaign, to save the old train station in Malalap, because if you remember, there's an old train station in Malalap that was actually due to be demolished, but then through the work, through the society, and of course the support of the Sabah government, the train station and the areas around it have been gazetted as one of the Sabah's heritage. So that was one of the work that we are really proud of. And of course, over the last 11 years, I guess, 11 years roughly, we have done quite a number of other things as well. As in terms of getting connection from around the world, people who used to work in North Borneo, people who used to have families, and they are now scattered all around the world, but still want to be part of Sabah's history. So they are able to to get all the relevant history that is very nostalgic to them. So today we have a special guest, as I mentioned. Special guest, we have Robin. Robin, as you can see from my screen, Robin is he's based in Australia. He is the son of Keith Wookey. As you know, Keith Wookey, I'm sure you have heard of that name before. Keith Wookey was also known as W.K.C. Wookey, was a district officer and later resident in the post-war British colonial government of North Borneo. And at some point in time, Wookey was the most senior officials stationed in Sandakan as resident in Sandakan, and also appointed by the Queen to the Executive Council for North Borneo. So without further ado, I'm going to share the floor to Robin to briefly tell to the followers of North Borneo Historical Society who is he and why is he here today. Robin, the floor is yours.
Hello there. I've never done this before, so excuse me, but where do I start? My God. Um, my interest came in very late, and I really regret not becoming more interested in history and my birthright a lot earlier. It started in the year 2000 when I first went back to see my sisters, who I've never met before, and my two lovely sisters, who dad betrothed a local woman before the war under the foot of Mount Kinabalu. And I must say, those sisters and their family have created a huge number of Sabahans now who I am so affectionately close to. So it's very special to have that connection with Sabah, with my sisters. But look, to get on to myself, I was born in Kota Kinabalu or Jesselton, and in the first year, and then of course we very soon moved to Sandakan. I think we stayed in the Agnes Keith house for 1 year while it was getting, and of course, getting redone. And now, can you hear me all right? Just is everything
Yeah,
all right? Is the
it's fine.
audio good?
Yeah,
Okay, good. Um, I must say, I was there in Sabo for the first 8 years of my life. So you have to forgive me. My memory of that place is through a child's eyes. And while I know that during this time that Dad was in a sort of the peak of his position, my experience was someone who had this vast adventure playground and a place to explore. And of course, the thousand steps and exploring the marketplace and going up boat on the Kinapadangan River, seeing the crocodiles was all a wealth of experience. Going to Pahala Island to go swimming and all that. I must say, it created a very distorted view of my life because it was funny when I first went back there and I went back to Sandak, and it was a very emotional time. I saw all these places in my childhood and met some old Chinese fellows. And I met this old man, and he said, "Ah, Wookey, ah, the king. We used to call him the king." I said, "Oh, really? I mean, why would you do that, you know?" But anyway, look, it started me on the road of becoming interested in, of course, leaving there at a young age and moving to the UK, then coming to Australia. I was very much into my own thing and my own future, and all talk of empire and the good old days. And I thought it was an indulgence of the past that was long gone. It was history. And while my mother had photos of Prince Philip and all these various important people on the mantelpiece, I just thought it was another era gone by and not so important anymore in my own life. But going back there for the first time and remembering my childhood and having people come up to me and say, "Wow, we remember your dad. He was such a good guy." And I said, "Wow, really?" Because remember, he died when I was very young.
how
Mother
old are
was
you?
a widower and he brought up 2 kids. And so I didn't really know him that well, but knew him on a level of family friends telling me about him or mother telling me what a great guy he was. And sort of going back there, and then of course Sandakan especially, and then seeing the other family from his first wife before the war, because he was there since 1936, which was quite an early period before the war, and of course a very different time, the pre-war time, and of course those who ran the show were a different ilk of people. World War II really changed things, and of course being interned by the Japanese in the POW camp really, really changed things for Keith, his first family, and of course his life from there on. It's easy to think, all these people came in there afterwards that it was a smooth run, but I tell you one thing I'd like to say that's really important. The road to governance and the relations between the locals and the Europeans was carved out by the relations of the early pre-war people. The stories I hear of some of the pre-war people were just moving stories, were a testament of the way they related. I'm not saying them all of them were like that, but some of them were really, really loved by the locals. This will become a subject of a story I'll write about. Just to give you an example, I mean, Richard Evans, who came out of POW camp, and they heard he was coming back. They lined the streets for miles, welcoming back when he was released from the POW camp. Unfortunately, the BMA didn't treat him kindly because of the way he's welcomed the Japanese. It was seen somewhat too appeasing, but at the same time, this fellow had a remarkable ability to connect with the locals. And it was this ability to connect with the locals, with some of them, I'm not saying all of them, that really made the job easier for the newfound people of the BMA, and of course the Australian soldiers in the BMA, and then of course the Colonial Service people. I cannot understate that. They really, really laid the foundation of that good relations that were had. And it's a mute point that doesn't get talked about in history, that this early history by some of the key figures, Coombe, Dingle, Dad, Chisholm, McCartney, and the like, really, the new people really called upon these people for the way, for advice. And this was a big part of Dad's role. Whenever a new appointee would come, a governor or would come onto the fore, they'd always call upon Dad to ask him, how should we do this? Who do we talk to? How do we go about achieving this goal? So really, their job was made a lot easier by these people that came in the early days, I've found. And then, of course, the build up to, what I've found, which was quite an amazing feat, from a nation, story of a nation state and its marvelous history, and going through the tragedy of during the war and the destruction, the rebuild, and then of course finally the Federation of Malaysia. What a great success story it is.
Mm.
Um,
So, Robin,
it's been no mean feat to achieve Sabah to be
mm,
where it is now, and to see all the family there now doing so well. And of course, I really want to make a point that those people, including my dad, I find not really remembered how they should have been remembered in
mm,
terms of what they've achieved for the nation state.
mm,
Now, the other part, talking about myself, I'm not very good at talking about myself, but look, here, my role has always been with the media as a media consultant, working in movies and graphic design. I never went into government or anything like this. Uh, Australia sort of gave me a fertile ground for expression of a
mm.
wealth and development of a whole lot of other ideas, which hopefully one day I'd like to write about. I live on a farm which I've called Kinabalu, and it's in the far northern rivers region, and we're surrounded by a national park quite close to the ocean. And I have a marvelous view, of course, of the ocean and the sea. And being the fond of the jungle, of course, and I think my fondness of the jungle and this jungle here is why I've landed here. It's even though it feels like miles from anywhere, it's actually not.
It actually
It's
looks
actually
like
quite close to the beach, 45 minutes from the airport. So if I want to hop on a plane, I can be there in an hour.
okay. Robin, can you hear
But I
me?
must say, for the last 13 years here, it's kept me. I've never worked so hard in all my life.
Mm.
Hopefully, I'm not getting too boring. Do you want to
Right.
ask a question and lead me into something that you'd like to hear more about, Richard?
Yes, yes. I just want to make sure. Can you hear when I ask you questions?
I'm not hearing you at the moment.
Okay.
So I'm
You have
not.
to, yeah, just make sure that you can actually hear my questions.
Okay,
Um,
let me just see what.
right. Okay.
Richard?
Yes, much better.
You've gone silent. Are you hearing me?
I can hear you. Okay, it's good.
Are you hearing me? I'm not hearing you, Richard, for some reason. I don't know why.
Maybe it's your microphone setting.
Anyway, just give me the thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, good. All right, because I'm not hearing you. My other family, I must say, are just absolutely marvelous. I feel closer to them, the ones that live in Sabah and in Kinabalu now. Before the war, Dad married a local Dusun woman from Borneo and had 2 daughters. One story that comes to mind is that they used to call him Monkey Man because he had such a hairy body that, of course, it was frightening to see him with no clothes on because he was full of hair. Thank God I didn't inherit that aspect of him. But of course, he used to speak fondly during this time of the pre-war time, riding his pony because there were no roads, riding between the villages. And from what I hear, is very close to the locals back then. It's just such a shame none of them are around at present. And of course, with the invasion of the Japanese, he's dragged away and tortured and Bahala Island and finally to Kuching as a POW. There was a terrible time where so many people didn't make it, and of course he never spoke much of his horrible experience during the war. The post-war time, the first wife remarried again because anyone that was single with children were not very well looked after if they were not seen to be belonging to a husband, or they turned into prostitutes. They married again, of course. Everything had moved on. It was quite sad in a way. And of course, during the post-war time where he came to Australia for an R&R, he finally met his second wife. Introduced my dad with Marcus Clark, the guy that wrote that The Doctor's Borneo, because they were in POW camp together. Met my mother for the first time, and of course, they got married in 1947. I'll just show you a picture of her. She was a very pretty girl. Must have definitely helped her career. See that there? Yeah. And of course, after the war, during those times, the immediate post-war period was very difficult. Things were there was nothing. Everything got destroyed. It was a real challenge to get everything on the go again. Now,
Robin,
I don't know why I'm not hearing you, Richard, because I'm not getting anything from you.
Okay, maybe it's your headphone.
I'm not hearing anything, so
is it because of your headphone?
I'll just flip this one. Richard?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
See what I'm doing now. 1 second. No, I'm not getting the audio for some reason. I don't know why.
All right. I'm just going to show a short clip.
I'm not hearing anything. We're just going to try and fix this audio where I can hear you. I'll just try and pick it up on the side. Do you want to message me, Richard, through Messenger?
Right.
And see how we can fix this.
All right. So while
because I'm not hearing anything to do with you at present.
All right. While I'm gonna message Robin, I will share a video of in 1948. This is actually a video shot by Robin's father. It was taken in Jesselton in 1948.
Anyway, look, I could try and just keep talking.
I'm not getting anything. All right. Show me a video now. This is really awkward not to be able to hear you, Richard. Right. This was immediately post-war that this is about. And of course, they just got married, and then they got turned on. They got their first car, a little Aston Martin. Look at this. Lovely picture, very happy. And of course, some of the poetry I've read that wrote about the marriage, absolutely divine and beautiful. Just Richard Love. That's the picture of the immediate post-war Chesterton period of Cody Kinabalu. Okay, thank you.
Come on with the rain, I will smile on my face. I walk down the lane with a happy refrain, just singing, singing in the rain, dancing in the rain.
All right. I'm going to quit it and open it again. I'm sorry.
I'm happy again. I'm singing and dancing in the rain. I'm dancing and singing in the rain.
Can you hear me now?
Hi, Robin. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
All right, that's
Sorry
great.
about that.
Anyway,
Just
yeah, that was a great video. It's always great to look at the video once in a while. When I first saw it, I was like, wow, this is amazing because, as you know, we have been working on this society for quite some time, and then when we bump into this kind of footage, it's like finding a lost treasure. And I believe there are plenty of more footages like this. At least I know Robin still has a bunch of them, and he mentioned to me that he has still tons of unprocessed films, at his home. So, Robin, do you want to tell a bit about what the footage was all about? I know it was taken. Some parts were, I think, it was actually taken in Jesselton, and there are some familiar places like the Tanjung Aru beach. But perhaps you want to tell more about the footage.
it was taken before I was born, but of course this was just after Mum and Dad got married in 1948. arrived in Jesselton. He was posted out to Tenom, bought their first car. It was the early days of the rebuilding of Sabah or North Borneo or Jesselton. The footage moves between the first thatched hut that they first lived in, and then they had a house made up. It was all very simple, made with a tap. The structures were very simple, and of course, there was shortages of all kinds of things, including food, and of course, it was quite a thing the first few years, the rebuild time. It was not easy times. It was definitely not a life of comfort and leisure. It was a lot of hard work, I believe. It moves. I know they used to love their walks in Tanjore in those days, and it's a nice, lovely bit of footage of Mum walking along the beach. There's lots of footage of gallivanting on the beach there and going on boats on the island with their friends and family. Again, this was before my time, so they all certainly seem to have a very jolly time. Just to give you a bit of a nature of Dad, because remember, I didn't really know Dad. He was before my time, but after meeting my auntie for the first time and meeting what kind of person she was like, he was a very folksy kind of character, very down to earth, likable. He loved his whiskey and they loved their fags. And as Tommy Thompson, the old accountant that used to look after the books for the charter company, very good with people, very good at relating and connecting with people, and had a way with. He was a very likable person. And again, I guess you got to remember, I didn't really know the man. Oh, I met him, I knew him as a child, but not as the man. And to hear these lovely things about him from various family members or people that knew him was very, very touching stuff. Um, so yeah, that footage was probably first bit of footage he took in the post-war time. Some of that was quite damaged from age because we didn't really get them done till far too late, and so it was a rescue operation to get all the film. In fact, there's still film of the pre-war times that's in tens, in pieces, and would take a lot of time to resurrect. He was a keen photographer, and of course, I've got a mountain of color slides of all this pictures of people and so forth, which I don't know. It's going to be quite a thing to decipher. The other challenge, of course, is all the letters that he wrote from Saba to Mum during the early days, talking about all the things that were going on and being done in the early days, which is going to be a challenge because he's got the typical doctor's scrawl of where you just can't find it so hard to understand everything. Read, so it's a real challenge trying to decipher. But I must say I've moved a long way since the year 2000 when I first became interested and know a lot more. And I think he was a good guy. And there's some really, really good guys, including Dad back in the time. Now the audio's gone off, which means something's happened. So I'm going to turn my
off, so it comes back on the phone. Are you there, Richard?
Yes, can you hear me?
It's gone off again. I don't know why. So I'm guessing just type in messages. Are you hearing me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, good.
So who can message
if you've
some of the
got
questions?
a particular question, maybe best type it in the message out so I get it.
All right, I'm going to ask you one question.
Sorry, we're just newbies on this using this platform, so
it's fine.
Okay, good.
All right, so just
we're not as well practiced and not as well polished as we could be, so please excuse our
Yeah,
Just
for
focusing
the
on presence.
technical
We
issues.
don't make it too boring for you, you know.
Do you want to show some of the photos that you have?
There's a lot of good people I've found who are really. One thing that strikes me is interviewing all the few Borneo people. Okay, they love Sabah. So many people love the place. Okay, I'm going to show you some photos of interest. Okay, here we have a picture of Dad in 1936, just before he went to Borneo. He had a job in a bank, and a very young man, very green under the collar. He used to ride his motorcycle Velocette on the Isle of Man, I'm told. I met Stephen Holly, who said he saw his name up there. So he's a little racing car driver. Loved his racing cars. And of course, one day, I guess he got sick of just working in the bank. He decided to saw this ad about going to the Far East and this mysterious jungles of Borneo. He announced to the family that he's off to Borneo the next day. He only told them the day before, and then he was gone. And nobody could understand why he would want to go all the way over there. Thirst for adventure. Just to get away. Working in the bank wasn't very exciting. I think there was talk of an accident, a girlfriend in an accident, and she had died. Anyway, back then you had all these places around the world where you pick a place you go to, and I guess the advertisement for the charter company to go to the Far East, the mysteries of Borneo, just whetted his appetite to go and explore. Definitely didn't do it for the money or glory or the empire, that's for sure. These people were young men and wanted to go do something different. They just came out of a depression in the UK, and of course, they came to Borneo. I think we mentioned some of the old guard in the early days. This was immediate post-war time. A lot of charter company people, Governor Hone, Lady Hone, Coombe, Edge, Keith. This would have been taken in Jesselton in 1950 or thereabouts. And I believe that Dad just started working in the Secretariat after being Assistant District Officer in Tenom, Beaufort, that he got seconded into the Secretariat to work closely to the Governor. As I understand it, those days, you've got to remember those people who came from the BMA, who were employed for the colonial government. A lot of them were newbies on the block, didn't know the language, and of course they called upon the people who had been there for a long time for advice. Now, just to give you another, I've made a selection of pictures. Now, this is another one of interest. I don't know if you remember Marcus Clark. He wrote the book Doctor's Borneo of his time in the POW camp. I don't know if you can see that. That's Dad Keith on the left, Marcus Clark on the right, and some British Army guy. Anyway, Marcus Clark was responsible for introducing Dad to his new Australian wife while he was on leave in Sydney, Australia, 1946, straight after the war. They were definitely tumultuous times back then. Of course, everything was the recovery from POW camp. I cannot understate how terrible it was, and how thin they were, and how emaciated they were. And what a terrible time. I'll show you another one from that time. This was the time when coming out of after the rescue by the Australians, and he's on the roof of the truck in the back, of course, typically with a fag in his mouth. There's another fellow, Ivan Quartermain, sitting in the seat, and you can see they're a happy bunch to get rescued from the POW. No, this was in Kuching. And from Kuching, they went to Labuan, to the hospital. Was there for a few weeks, and then, of course, by boat to Australia. And this was, I'm not too sure whether he knew what he was doing at that time, what he was doing. This is not just to put back to my other family the story of his first wife, because I don't want to understand. There was something very unique and special about that relationship to his first wife and the two half-sisters. This is not them, but this is typically what they would have looked like. It's not her. There's no old photos. All the old photos of that time are lost. Young, decent woman from Borneo. And again, not her, but a lovely girl. And as a result of her, but this whole other family in Sabah right now, 60, 70 of them. My God, and they're absolutely divinely beautiful. I adore them. I'm so lucky to have them as part of my life.
Robin, how many photos do you
How many
have
photos do I
in
have in
your
my
archive?
archive?
Yeah.
Oh, lots. There's a pile. It's lots. Hundreds, maybe a couple of thousand. There's lots. It's a mammoth job going through them, sort of scanning them one by one, and they're mostly color slide. Yes, so that's a mammoth task which I've steadily going through. Life on the farm myself, there's so much to do here, and it's been tremendous success. I do a small accommodation here, and it's absolutely taken off. And I get a lot of romantic couples, which is marvelous. And I guess being born in Borneo, I have a passion and love of the rainforest jungles. So I love talking about the trees and the kind of forests and all this sort of thing. Borneo is an interesting, of course, a big part of my life. And as time goes on, when I have a bit more time on my hands, I definitely want to bring out in the open the stories, the letters, and tell the family story of, hopefully it can write an interesting story of what is something that's really important, needs to be said. And I cannot understand this, is that these people, like my dad, not just dad, especially part of the pre-war time, laid the foundations of an incredibly positive relations between the locals, the Sabahans, and the Europeans, of course, following the British and then the Australians and the like. I cannot understate it. And I must say it is tragic that these people, including my dad, are just not recognised. I'll bring on another photo. I just had to tell that. Now, just to give you a picture of my other family here. I mean, that's a picture of me and all of them as a group, some of them. I mean, it's grown since then. They keep having sprouting children. And I'm lost with words and names. Every time I visit, buying presents is quite a challenge. Getting everything for anyone, but they're absolutely beautiful bunch of people. I'm so thankful for Dad's first. Please look at me. Okay.
So there's a question from Ahmad Khalil bin Anwar.
Okay.
He said, do you still have pictures of
I don't know
your...
why we're just not getting the audio. Something that stopped. I guess
Yeah.
I'll just try disconnecting these earphones. Something to do with this. See if we can get it connected again if I turn it on.
Anybody there? Can you hear me?
Yes.
No.
I can hear
No, we're
you.
not getting it. But can you hear me better with the headphones on? Because this is mic'd up. Can you get the mic from that, or is it from the
I can hear you.
phone?
I can hear you. Yes.
I'm not hearing. Okay, it's better. All right. So I can't hear you, but I can see questions on the screen. Um, I love my history, and Sabah is a special place in my heart, and I believe it has a wonderful future. There's something uniquely special about the place, and the people that I've met as a part of history are all been people deeply touched by the place, and whether it's the mountain or it's myth is something. It's got a golden future. Absolutely, and I want to write about that, tell a story about that one day. Okay, a story from Ahmad. Yes. A golden future Sabah has. Really special. And I look forward to telling a story of my feelings about that one day. I'm looking at the screen of what you're writing, so I don't see any other writing except from you. I don't see any writing on the screen. Oh yeah. Not much. There's a picture of him at Beaufort playing soccer. There's odd pictures of thatched huts on the coast there, black and white. Not a real lot, you know. Um, but definitely there's a picture of a hut which I'm still waiting for someone to verify, but I believe it's at Mempakul. It's like the rest house or something like this, or some sort of quarters. Um, and on the beach, and then playing soccer with the locals in Beaufort. Yeah, only one shot of Keith at Beaufort with locals in a soccer game.
All right, Robin. I guess we
Well, I
have.
hope it was a little bit
Yeah,
interesting for you. I'm not hearing you, Richard.
yeah.
I don't know what happened here. I don't know why it goes off.
Fine, that's fine. So I'm gonna
I
wrap
can
up
see
now.
you. A wave.
Hold on 1 second. No,
I
don't
hope it
go.
was interesting for you guys. And you better just sign me off now.
Okay.
Okay.
So firstly,
All right.
thank you so much for participating in today's live session, interview session with Robin. Apologies for some of the technical issues. We're not sure what's wrong, but of course, we hope that the next time we're going to do is we will try to sort it out as much as possible. Really do apologize for
I'm
that.
really not
But
hearing anything.
do thank you, Robin, for his time today. It's really, really great. I think we try to do these kind of sessions more often. We have been in touch with a couple of followers from around the world. I think they're keen to be part of this as well. But in the meantime, if you have any suggestions or any fellow historians or anyone that you want us to interview or to be part of, feel free to reach out to me, message the North Borneo Historical Society's Facebook page, or you can also find me on Facebook. You can just drop me a message, and I'll try to arrange the session. I think there's a lot of opportunities here for us to share real stories instead of just for me to posting on the photos on the page itself. I think when we have this kind of interactive session, a video session, we get we
Got
get
it.
we get to see people. We get to see people to be able to share all this kind of information. All right, so thank you so much. Hope to see you guys again soon. Please do tell your friends about this live session. I think it's a great way to tell about Sabah's rich history to around the world. So thank you again, and apologies one more time for the technical issues. hopefully we get to meet again, probably hopefully next week or as soon as possible. And hope you have a great Saturday, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you, guys.